and you can go ahead, Elisa.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the November 23rd meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I will call the meeting to order and entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved by Bankin, seconded by Colton. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Director Beerbaum, will you please read the purpose statement?
The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential.
Thank you very much. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent Reisner for our COVID-19 update.
Thank you. Okay. The first thing we are going to do is update on the local conditions. So Dr. Arnold.
Sure. And Eric, could you pull the board metrics document open? Scrolling just a bit. There we go. Awesome. So good evening. I wanted to present the board with an update on our Story County local metrics. And as you can see on this page, our 14-day positivity is 14.9 and our 7-day positivity is 12.2. However, our 14-day average new daily case rate is 104.7, which is the highest value I've reported this year. As a reminder, the case rate is the average number of new cases that are being diagnosed as positive for COVID over the previous 14 days. And you'll see the graph below to help further describe the data. The gray line is the positivity rate, and the orange line is the case rate. You'll notice that around November 15th, our positivity rate leveled off and started to actually decline, but our new case rate kept climbing. The reason for this is for the positivity rate plateauing and starting to fall is that the week of November 15th is when ISUs started doing their asymptomatic testing for students who wanted to test prior to returning home for Thanksgiving. The increased testing of asymptomatic people suppressed our positivity rate. In August and September, when we were last remote, our case rate topped out at around 85 cases per day. ISU's increased testing at that point resulted in about 1,800 tests per week. Last week, there were over 6,000 people tested in Story County. Increased testing is good, as more COVID-19 cases can be found. However, the increased testing at this level ends up suppressing positivity. It's why research has shown positivity is not a good measure for community spread and instead is a good measure of appropriate levels of testing. On our next page is the school-based metrics. And you'll see today there are 22 students who are positive for COVID-19 in the district and 63 quarantining due to being identified as close contacts. A majority of those close contacts are due to exposures outside of school. Additionally, I believe our quarantine student count might be a little bit low since the majority of our students are currently remote. Quarantines for us are identified through self-report from the parents to the school. And we encourage and remind parents to report to us if their child is identified as a close contact and recommended to quarantine, even if they are currently in remote. As far as staff, there are 11 positives for COVID-19 and 22 quarantining due to close contacts. One's pending a test result. This is the highest number of student and staff positives we have seen this year. The graphs below the table show the change in positives and quarantines over the past month. The left graph shows positives, the right shows quarantines. Students are in orange and staff are in gray. The chart shows the number of each category per day reporting a positive or quarantine respectively. The positive isolation period, just as a reminder, is 10 days after symptoms start, and the quarantine period is 14 days after exposure to a COVID-19 case. Finally, just to share with the board over the weekend, I have identified a few cases where there's a possibility where COVID was spread within the building. These were situations where people may have been within 6 feet for more than 15 total minutes of a positive COVID-19 case. Additionally, these were situations where people were correctly and consistently wearing masks. While I can't confirm that the spread is directly identified with the school, I can't rule it out either. And due to identifying this possible spread in the school setting, I'm currently evaluating the IDPH definitions for recommending quarantine based on mask wearing, where it's optional if a close contact is identified and masks were worn by both. I'm also looking at the time length of close contacts. IDPH defines that as 15 minutes continuous versus the CDC's 15 total minutes in a 24-hour period. Since this finding just happened over the weekend, I'm currently working through those impacts and if or how we can implement changes in our current process when a positive case is identified in the building. And that is the metrics report.
Thank you for the data presentation. That I like being able to see that. One question I'd have is on the potential positive spread in the building. Are you able to say whether that is staff related or student related?
We have cases of both.
Okay.
Dr. Arnold, I appreciate you pointing out, kind of helping everyone to understand what why our positivity may be going down right now, but with the increase in tests, because I was taking a look at that and reviewing the number of tests that were going on at Iowa State last week. So I really appreciate you pointing out that to all of us so we could all have a common understanding of that information. Thank you. And I appreciate this report. It's very clear to read. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Arnold?
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a second. Yep.
I
Sorry.
couldn't get to unmute fast enough. I guess I'm just looking at the trends and seeing them go upwards. I'm also watching the news and hearing about all these people who are planning to travel and cold and flu season and all that stuff coming up. And I guess I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you have a sense about where we're headed? If we're going to continue to see this uptick, do you anticipate they'll be down, a dip? What do you anticipate?
And from all discussion with local healthcare providers, I don't anticipate it going down. I would say we'll see what the impact of Thanksgiving is and whether or not people follow advice not to have large gatherings and to use mitigation strategies if they are having a gathering. But I honestly would anticipate we probably will see an increase the week after Thanksgiving, just due to our historical findings with holidays.
And do you feel that that's your assessment, even with the students leaving? You think you will still continue to see an uptick?
I do. I think maybe not at the same rate, but the positivity rate coming from ISU is not as high as what we're seeing in the community.
By way of an example, I did some analysis. I've been looking at the Iowa State reports they put out last week. 65% of the positives within the Story County data were non-ISU related. And the community positivity rate was about 35%. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the community, and we really need people, if they want to have kids back in school, wear your masks, take this seriously. It's not just the ISU students. Our numbers would be dramatically higher as far as positivity if ISU wasn't doing that testing.
And isn't my understanding, Dr. Arnold, isn't their last day of testing Wednesday? So once we're past Wednesday, there will not be specific testing sites for the students on campus.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I think their last day of testing might have actually been today.
Oh, okay.
Because they had to have time to get the results back to students.
I know I believe they closed Johnny's at Hilton today, and then I do think they're still offering symptomatic testing at Thielen, but the
Correct.
purpose of the asymptomatic is
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. The next item is what I put that on there. And what this is for, I wanted to talk a little bit about the timeline for the kind of deciding on the learning model. The motion that you made last time would cover us continuing to stay in the motion that you approved, I should say, would cover us for continuing to stay in remote as long as we had approval from the Department of Education. And so where we're at with the community spread, when this came out, we were in the daily case rate was 80s to 90s. Obviously now we're, I think it was 104 today. And so I will be applying for permission from the Department of Education to extend our online learning model. But I thought it was important that we had a conversation about that tonight because what it would mean, and I know that this is an odd way that the weeks work out. If we went an additional 2 weeks, originally we had said that we would come back into hybrid mode on November 30th. And so if we would remain in hybrid model and get, I'm sorry, 100% online, if we would remain in that model and get that extension for another 2 weeks, that would bring us back on December 14th. Obviously, that is the week before winter break. And I know that it doesn't make a lot of sense to the community, but we are only able to get those waivers for 2 weeks at a time. So we really don't have an option but to come back that week unless we extend it again and get approval. So that is what I would be recommending. Again, the previous approval covers the extension, but I did want to talk with you tonight and, and if there's any discussion or if you're opposed to that, I would be certainly willing to listen.
When we apply, I'm curious, when we apply for the 2-week waiver, do we have to be online for the entire 2-week period when you're approved for it?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Yep.
So what does our continual review process of our local metrics look like?
Well, tonight you'll have an option to vote on a new set of, I guess, new wouldn't quite be the right term, revised set of metrics. And so just like we review every day, we would continue to do that in relation to the revised metrics. And we have Dr. Arnold looking at it all day long and, working on contact tracing and all of our, like you heard a report tonight, keeping the numbers on those students that are quarantined or COVID positive, as well as staff. So that continues every day throughout the day and even on the weekends. So that's how we monitor that. And then it'll just really depend on what we do with the metrics.
So I know Dr. Arnold, and I understand what you're saying about the potential future that lies ahead. Should that not be the case, and should not, of course, none of us have a crystal ball, but should that not be the case, would there be an opportunity or a willingness from all of you to take a look at things if we could get the kids back, if some way our situation stabilized itself?
It's a question to the board?
No, that's a question to Superintendent Reisner or Dr. Arnold.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was a question to the board. Yes, I mean, obviously we would, if there was a magic that happened, we would, I think all of us want to bring students back. So we would continue to look for that opportunity to bring students back. But, I really want to be very transparent in where I believe we are, and where our leaders in the community are talking about where we're at. And so I see that this is a community-wide issue that is impacting a lot of different agencies. And I can't bring staff or students back when we have a case rate of 103 or 104 a day. I can't do it. So.
Sure. Well, and we're having a discussion. We have an action item later on the meeting that will provide some guidance for that. So
My hope would be that, yes, there's some magic that happens. So
yeah,
we
right.
certainly want to get kids back in school.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask a related question? Elisa, were you finished? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I am. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Here's a related question. So we got the update on the numbers, and I understand the difference between, I think we have more positive children than adults. But I guess what I'm thinking about is the staff and how adults are seeming to be more impacted than children, and certainly many of them have illnesses that exceed 2 weeks. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are about staffing and how you're going to be measuring that. If someone is positive, are they considered positive for the whole time of their illness, or how does that work?
I'll let Dr. Arnold answer that. That's a great question.
Sure. So once someone is positive, they are considered infectious for the period from when their symptoms start and then 10 more days. Now, they're allowed to return if it's been 10 days and their symptoms are resolving and they haven't had a fever or without the use of fever reducing or medications. And, they have to be able to work. If their symptoms aren't improving, they still have a cough, they still feel miserable. While they wouldn't still be considered infectious, they would not be advised to return just based upon not meeting the other criteria.
But would they show up as positive in the numbers that you present to us at these meetings?
At this point, they're only showing as positive for the duration of time that they're considered infectious.
So in theory, I know it's a long ways down the road, but so in theory, maybe part of what would be added is they're not technically positive, but we have this number of staff who are unable to work.
And that's a great point. That factors into our illness. So our staff illness or absence rate does incorporate anyone who is either COVID positive, quarantining, childcare, or unable to work due to illness. So if that illness is COVID related or non-COVID related or post infectious period, they would still show in that staff absence number.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Superintendent Reisner, regarding the submission, what is the turnaround? When people have been asking me, can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's 48 hours. So, and they have been taking right up to 48 hours. So it comes in pretty darn close to that deadline. So when we submit, we hear back within 48 hours.
But it's okay for us to go in because we've gone online without that, right?
Without the yes, they give you. Yep, okay. They give you a 3-day window,
okay.
So that you have the ability to go into that remote while they're deciding without penalty.
Okay. Yes, and I completely agree with this, given our numbers, and I'm not concerned. I know we all want to bring the kids back, so I'm not concerned about you not watching the numbers. I know you are, so thank you for that. But yeah, you just said it, and I think Alan said it. This is a community thing, and it's unfortunate, but I support it.
Thanks. All right. Anything else on that timeline? Yep.
I have one more question. I apologize. It's kind of related, but not really. So I had a question from the community about deadlines for open enrollment. I don't know when they are. And so I think someone was wondering, would the district kind of relax the deadlines? Because I think there are some parents who are like, if they may be interested in moving to districts that are fully in person no matter what. And it's my understanding that those deadlines are state imposed. They're not district imposed. Can you help me understand?
Yes, and I will ask Chris if you want to speak to this. I think you do a really nice job of summarizing this as well.
So I'm assuming, Director Benkin, that your question has to do with people wanting to open enroll to other school districts.
That's correct.
And the deadline for non-kindergarten students, because it's different for kindergarten, but is March 1st of the prior year. So for this school year, it would have been March 1st of 2020. They would have had to have their open enrollment papers in to be able to open enroll into the next the district for the next school year. For kindergarten, it's September 1st. So we're both past both deadlines. Once the deadlines are passed, before the deadlines, the receiving district has all the control. They have all the control on whether to accept students open enrolling into them. After the deadline, they can accept open enrolled students, but the sending district has to approve it because they have to approve the flow of money going to that. And almost always they don't, because by this time we have our budget set, we have our staffing set. And so we're not going to be able to reduce staff to reduce costs for additional monies we would have to send to other school districts. So that's kind of how the deadlines work. Now, there was a little bit of an exception this summer after when the legislature came back in and they passed the Senate File 2310. There was a very small window for parents to be able to open enroll kids through July 15th to one of the online schools, not just any school district, but to one of the 2 online school districts. So there was a little exception in that bill, but that was the only exception.
But again, those are state deadlines, not ACSD's deadlines.
Absolutely,
Okay.
they're statutory.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on that learning model timeline? Okay. Again, you don't need to take action on that. The next thing, so I want to preface this with a little bit of we were going to on December 7th do a data review. The board had asked some really great questions around data. And so we pulled all that together and we were going to on December 7th have, I think it's the 7th. I keep saying that date wrong. Am I correct on that? Is the 7th a Saturday? No. Okay. The 7th is correct. Sorry about that. It was stuck in my mind wrong. And so I got it right now. We were going to have all of this in one work session, but I appreciated an email that I received and asked a couple from the board asking, could we move the one piece of that data up? So tonight, what we are going to talk about is the failure rate at the secondary. So that would be grades 6 through 12. The rest of the data we're going to go over again, or we're going to go over on the 7th. But there were some articles. I think one was in the Des Moines paper and another one was in Ames. And so we just really wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing with the DNFs and then what our strategies are for addressing those struggling students. And so I asked both principals to come and share. And so I appreciate their willingness to do that. And I will turn it over. Dr. Nyberg, are you going to go first or is Principal Michael?
Principal Michael, please.
All righty.
All right, good evening. Eric, can you open up the PDF for the middle school? So to reiterate what Superintendent Reisner just talked about, we were asked to give a bird's eye view of just how the health of our system with our students. And so there's some notable findings on the top, but what I'll do is just kind of go through each one of those different components on that PDF that was shared with you all in the board packet. So if you scroll down just a little bit, Eric, so looking at the behavior referrals, what we wanted to do was take a snapshot of where we were last year and the year before with behavior referrals in campus. And so as you can see, we've noticed a reduction in behavior referrals from the last 3 years. So 2018, we had 101, saw a gradual reduction in referrals last school year this time, and then 2020 down to 11. There are probably a number of things that are contributing to that. You know, it'd be speculative on my part to kind of guess what those reasons are, but you know, we have a number of things that are happening in our school, like PBIS, critical consciousness, that's helped support reducing that. But also, we have 30% of our kids showing up at school at a time, so that has a role in it as well. Continue scrolling down. So going just a little bit up, sorry, Eric. So then we also took a snapshot of the D minuses and Fs, again, tracking it over the course of the 3 years. So the number within the bar graph represents the number of students who had D minuses or Fs at the end of the first quarter. So you would see that there is a gradual increase in the number of students who were assigned a D or an F, or excuse me, a D minus or an F at the end of the first quarter. And then the numbers above the bar graph represent the actual numbers of D minuses and F. So we had 303 students that had 726 D minuses and Fs. You know, we talked about this as a school community. You know, it isn't a comfortable feeling. It's not a great feeling to see this many kids struggling. And there's a number of things that would probably contribute to those factors. I will go back through and just kind of talk through how we're responding to this, but I just wanted to quickly talk through the data. Scroll down. The reason why we only have a 2-year comparison for MAP is because last year was the first year we brought MAP into our testing cycle. What you would see is that the dark blue line is 2019 mean RIT scores from the MAP growth for reading and math. And we broke it down by grade level. And really the data suggests that we're on par to where we were this time around last year. So in the same fall testing window. And then the last component is looking at attendance. We are noticing a decrease, but I will point out here that some of our data is problematic. We were struggling in the beginning of the school year with how to capture attendance. And right now we're relying on students, middle school students, to check themselves in that remote campus. And so there's still some things that we are trying to work through and trying to make sure that we secure some accurate data. In terms of how we're responding, there's a number of ways that we are responding. I think the most pressing issue here is the students who are experiencing, you know, D minuses and Fs, and even really Ds. And for kids who are even straight A students who are probably getting Bs and Cs, right? We, as a staff, have talked about needing to enhance our intervention process. So most recently, what we've done is we are assigning students an advocate, an adult advocate in the building. So I myself have one. And our role is to really serve as the go-to person who calls the student in, who reviews their classwork on Google Classroom, help them with some of the executive functioning skills that they are lacking to help organize their day, especially in a remote campus. There's also virtual study halls that are happening right now in remote campus where we've assigned students to get extra support. And then also there are some students who are being pulled in during this period where we're in remote learning. Those students at our building are those who have demonstrated through need that learning in a remote setting is not going to work whatsoever, just from their disabilities or things that were identified in their IEPs. So we have a number of, right now we've identified this last round, 98 students who are getting an enhanced intervention to support some of the areas that we're most concerned about. And then the last thing, and again, I was told just kind of give a bird eye view, but the last thing I'll leave you with is our next round that as we're looking at data is to continue to work on students who are unaccounted for. So we do have, the data that I have indicate that we have 86 students in our building that are unaccounted for. So they have made zero contact, have not logged in, have partially logged in the beginning of the year, but we've lost contact with them. And so again, we've responded in many ways, including going to their home, doing home visits. In some cases, we were able to re-engage them and bring them back into the building. In some cases, we just have not had the luck to engage students, whether it's in person or online. Of that 86, there is a smaller number where we've just had absolutely zero contact. The majority of those students, of the 86, are students that at some point had some sort of contact, but we've just kind of completely lost that continuity of instruction with them because of a number of reasons. So that's kind of the bird eye view for the middle school. I think the high school is going to go next, and then I think we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Just so you know, Mr. Michaels and I are giving our data in the same format. So that's why I let him go first, because I thought he would do a better job and more succinct job of explaining kind of the origin for our data. So much like the middle school, you'll see that our behavioral referrals have trended down, particularly for this year. I would add that besides having fewer students in the building at a time, our students are happy to be there. These are students who were not super thrilled about having an extended spring break and are happy to be involved in learning again in face-to-face, happy to see their friends. They really are happy to be there. So I think that helps with our behavior referrals because they're not having disputes with one another. A, because they're not interacting quite as much, and B, because they value being in building. So if you can scroll down a little bit more. So there's an update in this information. So this was pulled from our EIS information, and it was D minuses and Fs. We have an additional 43 Ds on top of this. And the reason why I point that out is to understand for us how our Ds and Fs break down. It's really, we need to look at how that data is dispersed to individual students and what kind of programming they are involved in. So we have a number of students, predominantly our lower classmen, who are all remote, who are engaging in 1 to 3 classes through Edgenuity. There is some speculation in the community that Edgenuity is causing our failure rates to increase, but when you dig into the number of individuals who have Ds and Fs, there's 533 unique individuals, of which 57.8% are in our hybrid A and B cohorts, and 42.2% are in our all remote cohorts. Then when you look at I forgot the number, I wrote it down, the 1,469 Ds and Fs, 507 of those are Edgenuity related, whereas the remainder are AHS class and our hybrid, whether the student is coming in half-time or fully remote. It's through our Google Classroom process that they're still not gaining traction. So I think that's an important consideration because students are struggling across the board, whether they're in person part of the time or all remote, they're struggling. If you can go ahead and scroll down. much like the middle school, our map data would suggest that our kids are on par for where they were at this time last year. The thing that we're going to do differently this year is we're going to test all of our students all 3 times this year. Last year, it's my understanding that we tested all of our students initially, and then we kind of we wanted to retest the students who struggled the most to get more data on them. But this year, we're going to continue to test all of our students so we can kind of see how they're trending throughout the year as additional data for our use in our interventions. And then again, like the middle school, we have seen a slight decrease in our attendance. As Mr. Michael said, a lot of this has to do with some of our we call them ghost students that we just haven't seen, haven't been able to get a hold of, haven't had any traction with. It's also some of our shifting attendance practices. It's not natural for us to take attendance when people are not with us. So it's been a learning experience for us. It's been a learning experience for families, and sometimes in that process, there have been some errors in our data. To go over kind of what we are doing to intervene. As of the end of October, we started to ask teachers, those students that they had the most concerns about. We initially started like, who are those students you haven't heard from, or who are those students who haven't made any progress? That kind of got muddied in between those students who are truly the ghost students, and then those students who are not progressing. That initially generated a list of 189 students. Of those students, we started to conduct home visits, more aggressive phone calling and text messaging and contact with families, and then interventions. In some cases, those students who were all remote were then asked to come in, and their families were asked to come in and switch to hybrid because all remote wasn't working for them. In some other cases, when home visits were conducted, someone sat down with family, student, walked through how to get on the Google Classroom, how to find their work, kind of what they were needing, and trying to provide that intervention. In addition to this, we have kind of tried to update that list as we've gone, but now that we're pulling our DNF data, we're utilizing that information to specifically target our 2 most concerning populations right now. That's our graduating seniors. We want to make sure that they have what they need so that they can graduate, and then our freshmen, that they're getting what they need to transition and be successful. So our first week of all remote, we brought in about 60-ish students who were in and above and beyond our special ed students and our ELL students that we had already been bringing in every day, to set them up with more individualized help in a person, like an in-person study hall, where they sat at a table and had assistance with finding their work, getting that work done, getting it turned into the teacher if the teacher needed to converse with them, setting up that Google Meet so they can virtually meet or meet at a social distance within the classroom to do that. This week, we've turned that over into working with freshmen to do very much the same thing. So we bringing in students, and again, socially distancing them, but providing them that traction. Like I went and walked a young man to a classroom and said, hey, asked the teacher if the teacher had a little bit of time to work with him in the classroom so that he could get some work done, where he had started the day kind of sleepy and not engaging because he just didn't know where to start. With working with that teacher one-on-one, he was able to get at least 3 assignments done before lunch. So those are the kinds of interventions that we are putting to place, and we're campaigning hard and heavy with our teachers to work with our students. I will say that everyone is doing the most they can to help students be successful, and to really look at their practice look at how they're grading, look at how they're doing things, and really be flexible with their approach. So I'm really proud of our teachers for stepping up to the plate with the things that they're doing.
And then did we want to open it up now for some questions, Dr. Nyberg and Principal Michael?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Michael, can you just real quick, you bleeped out a little bit on, I'm going back to my notes to figure out where it was. I think it was when you were talking about the number of students coming in during the remote period. I think that's when I lost your voice on my computer.
I didn't state how many students were coming in during the remote period.
Okay.
I said we had 98 students in enhanced interventions related specifically to COVID. Within that 98, I don't have the number on the top of my head, but there's a small group of students that are coming back during the remote closure right now.
Okay, it was the 98 that I had missed. Thank you.
Okay.
I have some questions. They're kind of the same. So it's interesting to see that the data between the two buildings was the same. Well, so first, I just want to start by thanking you all for doing this. I know it was a lot. I know you already have a lot on your plate. So to go through all of this, I really appreciate it. I was attending the IASB delegate assembly, and there was a school, I can't remember which one it was, and so I don't want to misattribute. It was in Eastern Iowa, and I think they said they have lost 600 students, just literally lost them. They haven't gone to another school. They've just vanished, right? So I appreciate that you're making efforts, that this was maybe something no one anticipated would be a part of the COVID experience, and we would literally just lose children. But I guess my questions are kind of related to what you have presented. So I'm wondering really a couple of things. I'm wondering why we're looking at D minuses and Fs, which to me are the same thing. Is this meaningful in your world?
Well, and I'll take the lead on that one. Yes, that's usually one of the markers that you use for your MTSS process. You look at those students who are struggling the most. You're looking at Ds and Fs, and then assessing the degree to which they're struggling, and then what interventions need to be put in place so that they can improve their outcome. So with high school, grades tend to be things revolve around that achievement of grades in order to assess the healthiness or the academic healthiness of the student. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but you said Ds and Fs, and what we were presented was D minuses and Fs. So like, I'm wondering, like, if you had gone all the way up to D pluses, would the numbers be the same? Or, I mean, I'm wondering the D minus and F, those seem like the same, and I just wondered why those two.
That's what the EIS, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so it was the quickest method for us to pull data through our EIS system, which already pulled that information. So we set up our EIS to pull that. And so just to be pretty quick in turning around that data, it's what we went with.
Right.
On a related point, I wondered what the relationship was, because those students are failing, right? D minus is failing. I'm wondering what the relationship is between the D minus and the F and proficiency.
That's a really good question. We are still, it depends on in our case, it depends on the class. In some cases, we're not a standards-based school. So in terms of proficiency, we're not necessarily using standards and assessing every student with that lens on looking at proficiency. Rather, we're still in the process of moving in that direction, whereas we might be able to articulate the learning target or the standard that we're going for. We're not necessarily articulating fully the students' achievement on that same measure, but on the points that they earned as they're getting to that. Does that make sense?
I don't know if I fully understood that, but that's.
We're still very points based rather than standards proficiency based.
So if you had done these data looking at proficiency, the numbers would be larger because you can still be getting a D+ or C- and not be proficient, right? So all the students who are not proficient are not necessarily reflected in these charts. Is that fair?
That's fair, but it's also fair to state the other way around. We have
yes,
right, algebra and geometry at the middle school level who are getting D- and F, and that's clearly not an indication of proficiency because they're in some cases, double accelerated in math.
Okay.
Right. And when we look at proficiency, it's really a notion of, do they understand, and how can they produce the product based on their understanding in the way that we've asked them to. That doesn't necessarily mean they don't understand the concept. So I mean, it gets a little bit more complicated at the high school level.
Okay. And then you talked about the responses. Principal Michael talked about kind of a one-on-one adult advocate. And I think you talked about someone doing home visits. Who's doing that?
So our TLC staff and our admin team and counselors are doing the bulk of them. I did forget to mention that we have kind of color coded our students and have asked teachers to do much like the middle school and pick a couple of kids to be advocates for, checking in on them, helping with that process. That also started the week that we went fully remote.
And one more question about that, because I was listening to what you were saying and the interventions you were describing, and they seemed all of them seemed fairly technical, right? Like, I'm going to help this kid learn how to log on to Google. We're going to take them to their classroom. We're going to show them how to turn in assignments. That's kind of more technical skills versus kind of more academic skills. And I'm wondering, is that what you're finding, that people just don't know how to navigate this online environment? Or are you finding that students aren't able to learn in this online environment?
Both, because a lot of it is executive functioning. In order for students to really be able to do well, they have to be very independent learners and very self-starting. And so with students who are not that way, who struggle with organization, who struggle with knowing where to start, feeling confident about starting, knowing how to like prioritize, a lot of it has to do with those factors. And then the technical aspect of, if I go to my Google Classroom stream, how do I discern when we're meeting from when something is due? And how do I make that, how do I understand that information instead of just being overwhelmed? So it's both.
And my last question, I swear. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jonas.
No, so I was going to add, I'm glad you brought that question up. So it is both, but right now where our teachers or our staff is struggling with more is that engagement component. Yeah. So being able to what I did enlist, which is an intervention in itself, is tracking students down who are somewhat engaged in the learning and how much time that takes. I mean, my teachers have told me, I am hunting this kid down today, and it could take 30 to 40 minutes. And so think about the number of students that just to get them to log on synchronously. So a lot of the things that we are struggling with as a building does evolve around the technical aspects of it.
The last question then is because the data wasn't disaggregated, right? It's kind of this whole lump of students, and I understand why you did that. But when I'm thinking about the students that, this is an assumption, right? The students that we are assuming are kind of having all of these other struggles, I'm wondering if you have a student who you talked about, students who are unhoused, you talk about students who have special needs. I don't want to get the terms wrong and get Darcy mad, right? But students who need help learning, and then students who have like free and reduced lunch needs, right? I'm wondering if if the district is able to figure out, are there targeted interventions based on maybe certain needs that individual students have versus this kind of, you know, what you've described. I wonder if you could maybe talk about that a little bit.
So our hopes with the advocate process is that by building that rapport and relationship and spending that one-on-one time with that student, we would get to learn more about the individual needs of that student. And that's harder to do in a classroom setting, right? That's too much, I believe, for a teacher to have to manage a classroom and also trying to figure out individually what this specific student is needing that's not happening. And so that's really the role of our advocates. And I think it goes back to, I think Director Franson asked the question, like, who, or maybe it was you, who are the advocates who are doing these interventions? So for like our home visits at the middle school, it is our associate principals and our counselors. And then sometimes there's been assistance with our SRO to support that. But in terms of the advocate, every adult in our building eventually will be assigned a student. So we will be able to max out at 116. That includes EAs and secretaries and custodial staff, whomever. We want to really target and build relationships with our kids and figure out exactly what is it that the student needs. And then that advocate takes on the role of helping to make sure that those things are put in place.
I would concur.
One question I have, and I apologize for this, it's just an odd year to think about what the enrollment is like. If you were to quantify the D's and F's, the number of D's and F, students with D's and F's as a percentage of your schools, what would it be?
Mine is roughly, I'm not good with math, so I apologize. About a third. It's not half. So it's somewhere between like a third and half.
I think if my memory serves me right, I think ours was 403 students for the middle school. So that would be about a third.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up because it's important to realize that percentage, I think, for the board, that this is pretty widespread. Thank you.
Any other questions? Again, I really appreciate you sharing the data and talking us through. I know those are difficult conversations to have, so very much appreciated.
I appreciate both Dr. Nyberg and Mr. Michael. I appreciate you being here, having these conversations because they are difficult, right? This is not data anybody wants to see, and there's some questions that come with it. And so I appreciate that your willingness to be here and address them with us. I'm curious, we're often asked what questions we have, but I would be curious to know from the two of you, what do you think the questions are that we should be asking you right now in light of these reports? I'm not trying to stump you. I'm just really curious.
I mean, I am trying to build a kind of all hands on deck, one building, one community approach. So how do we as a community move through this in ways that don't harm our students, that don't harm our staff, that don't harm the what this will look like for people at the end of this pandemic crisis? Because right now, like responding to text messages, right now I feel like everyone feels that they're harmed, and it's hard to prioritize who gets harmed less. And it's not an issue that the school board has put us in. It's just a condition of where we are, and what people are having to choose one thing over another. and how that's being communicated. Now, I will fully admit that in my uh, zeal, I guess, to really push the envelopes of what education can look like, that has felt like a harm to some of our teachers who might not have felt that that was a supportive message. But I believe that we can also take the opportunity to really look at, what does engagement look like? How do we engage when everything else is, excuse my language, burning down around us? How do we do something great with this tragedy, this, whole world tragedy, that will make us stronger on the other side? That's hard.
Absolutely. And who is harmed less is so, I mean, we have talked about this entire time, this incredible predicament that we have been put in. So I appreciate those words that you share, Dr. Nyberg, because it is the difficult situation that we have all been in, put in with this. Mr. Michael, do you have anything to add?
I was trying to think of the right questions. I feel like we read an article as an administrative team, I want to say last Thursday, and it was about I believe, an African tribe and how they greet one another. And one of the ways that they greet each other is asking, how are the children doing? And for us, that's a really tough question to answer right now. They're not well. Mm-hmm. And I think at some point, I find myself every single day balancing the needs of keeping people safe while also trying to continue to push us academically. And the two are just not really working well together right now. And so I think what we're trying to do is continue to educate students in the best way that we can under the circumstances that we're in, and hopefully circle back to when we are making budget decisions. What else do we need to close the gap that's clearly going to exist from this pandemic? So I would say, ask me that question again when we're talking about budget priorities and what our needs will be for next school year once we get past this pandemic.
You provide a great segue. I'm not asking this because you just led to it. It's written on my piece of paper. What do you need from us as your board? How, is there anything we can do right now? Obviously, there will be opportunities in the future, specifically with budget planning, but what do you need from us right now? Is there anything we can, other than, I'd like to solve the pandemic, but I can't do that, so.
I think as a community, and I'll go back to what Mr. Michael said in terms of that Maasai story, how are the children? We need to be looking out for our neighbors and understanding that this family next door might struggle with their child and their educational experience, but they can't do that alone. And we need to be trying to it can't just be the school's sole responsibility for finding all the ghost students. We all have to look for those ghost students and reach out to them and create a safe and welcoming community that says, we know you're struggling. We understand that this is hard, but we also understand that you have so much to offer us too, that we want to figure out what we can do to help you do this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think you all have been providing it thus far, which has been support and a clear stance on making sure that the students and staff members are safe. And so that I ask that you just continue to make that your top priority, right? And that consistency is really needed for us as adults, because we don't want to try to guess between every board meeting what direction we're going to be going in, right? And so I appreciate the fact that this board has continued to prioritize safety this year, and that you've made that very clear to us. So I appreciate that.
Well, I just want the two of you to know that you are very much appreciated, and I really, your willingness to be vulnerable and talk about this is so important for our community. And I hear your words, and I appreciate your problem solving that you continue to do to try to lead our two biggest buildings through this difficult time period. So thank you.
I support.
I just have one quick question. I don't want to take us in a different direction, but we're just talking about kids who are struggling. I'm going to flip it and say, I imagine there are some kids who are doing well. Have you asked them what's working for them?
Some of our
So to share, back.
Absolutely. So particularly when we had students in the building, that's what was my main mission over lunch break or lunch duty, was to ask kids how things were going. And a lot of them said that they liked having additional time to work on things, to like, instead of being in a classroom all the time, they had that flex time during their hybrid days. They can get up and walk around. They could choose how to do things a little bit differently and organize their time differently. They also really liked the fast-paced structure that some teachers are implementing in their synchronous time, whether that's in the classroom or during a Google Meet, and then the ownership and the ability to kind of be allowed to adult themselves, I guess, or to be adulting in their approach to their education. So I think for a lot of our students, it's helped them to be more confident and to know that they understand how they learn and have some ownership over that process.
I guess what my question was really asking is, have you asked the kids who are doing well what's working and taking that to the kids who are struggling? Because some kids have figured this out. And so can they have some insight into how they can help their peers, or to help you help their peers, because they taught kids speak. Do you know what I mean? Like that might be a different window to look at. So I was just wondering if you've surveyed them and said, hey, what's working for you? Is there something that we can share with others? That's kind of where I was going with my question.
I've been trying to do some of that, but it doesn't necessarily translate kid to kid. It might translate in the same social circle, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a different social circle.
And what I will say is that we are putting out a panorama survey. It'll come out the first week of December. And that's really to gain information from many different groups. So there'll be a student survey, there'll be a staff survey. And yes, we know everyone is surveyed out, but this is really important information for us. So that survey is being worked on right now, and it will have to do with remote learning and how students are doing. And Erin, did you want to say anything about that survey?
I certainly can.
You don't need to. If I missed anything important, I wanted you to weigh in, but I think that survey information will help answer some of those questions too. Director
No,
Lincoln.
If someone has a question about it, I'd be more than happy to spend 30 seconds talking about it, or longer, depending.
Yeah. In other words, this was my plug for Take That Survey. So we can gather this information.
I just have one quick question. You said that it is gathering information about remote learning. Is it limited to that, just looking at the remote learning experiences, or is it broader than that? I don't need to get into the details of the specific questions. I'm just curious when you say it's about remote learning.
Go ahead, Erin.
Sure. So I'm more than happy to speak about it briefly. So the survey will be about, sorry, forgive me while I speak here. I've got a kid asleep in the other room. So the survey it will be about distance learning, so it can gather information about our students who will either be in hybrid learning or in fully remote learning. So about how to improve our, sort of swap back and forth between hybrid learning while we're, which is a mixture, right, really of remote learning and on-site learning. Which we may still be doing for a little while, depending on our case numbers, right? Or if we're back in buildings, which if our case numbers go down, we all like to have that as well, right? As well as how we can improve for our remote learners. It'll be similar to the panorama survey that we do in spring. It can gather information about sense of belonging, about some of our equity concerns, as well as how we can potentially improve some of our learning model. So how we can connect with teachers, how we can connect with learning materials, all of that type of information for students. Also, we'll be sending out survey to families about how to support students in learning, as well as for staff and our teachers. Yep, and we're going to try to be doing that in the first week of December and getting, it'll be a pretty quick turnaround just because everything's quick turnaround right now, right? But we're getting those results back before we leave for winter break.
Thank you for that explanation. That was helpful. Appreciate that. And it's,
Sure thing.
yes, thank you for making the plug, Superintendent Reisner, so we can make sure all of our families are aware that they should be watching for that once we get back from Thanksgiving break.
So that's PK through 12 then?
Yes, and it will be available in 6 languages, as well as we'll be working with some of our other translations as well. And it should be available on mobile devices. And we're working with our communications team to make sure that it's accessible as possible.
And our student family advocates will also be reaching out to families they may be working with to make sure we hear from them as well.
That's correct.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so since we are in 100% virtual, we don't have that update on numbers of model numbers, so we will move on.
All right. Any other additional questions for Superintendent Reisner on COVID-19? Seeing none, I will go ahead and read our statement regarding public comments, which will follow our COVID-19 report, our discussion items, as well as our public forum. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. And we will go ahead and open, just as a reminder to our community, the way in which we do this is that if you please will raise your hand. This is for comments only on the COVID-19 report. We will have a public forum in a bit, but we ask that you please raise your hand. Eric will give you permission to speak. I'll call on you, and you may speak for 3 minutes. And Jen Peterson, you've been given permission to talk.
Hi, my name is Jen Peterson. I live at 2530 Somerset Drive. One of the things I was really interested was seeing the statistics just with the impact, I think a little bit of COVID in having on student grade success. And I think teachers and administrators are working super, super hard. Their work and the amount of time that they're spending is maybe not yielding the results equal to the time spent. And I would say that's one thing that we've experienced as a family. I am really excited to hear that there's going to be a survey with student feedback and parent feedback. One idea I had is maybe just even including maybe some focus groups with that. We're struggling a little bit with our youngest on student engagement. And one of the things that we're trying to do is even just flex our work schedules to support that. He is one that will rush through things. And so, you know, he'll come upstairs at 8:45 in the morning and say, I am done for the day. And so I can only imagine we're probably not alone as a family in that. I think Michelle asked some good questions about what's working and what's not working. And what we have found is we've got one student that's super focused and we don't have to worry about managing, and one that is having challenges. And we're thankful for the school. They've come along and supported us, but I would say it hasn't been easy. I would say the technical aspect of computer and IT stuff is working very, very well. But I would say for us, the engagement piece is really hard. I don't know if there's ways to encourage students to have their cameras on or focus on ways to engage that, increase that engagement. I would also agree with Jonas. I love that we're keeping people safe and we're focusing on that as the core goal. But I would say we're struggling as a family unit on the education piece, and would love to be a part of that solution in figuring out how we can increase engagement without putting more stressors on our staff. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else from the community like to speak on COVID-19? And Kira Werstein. And you've been given permission to talk. But I think there you go. You're not muted anymore.
My name is Kira Werstein, 2516 Camden Drive. My kids go to Fellows. And I just want to start with, I know that each of the board members are involved in the school district because you're passionate about education. And as representatives of our community, I think that it's time that those decisions on our learning model really reflect our community's high level of value on quality face-to-face education for our children. I'm concerned that the conclusions that have been made on the effectiveness of the learning model this year, and most specifically with the elementary students, is convoluted. And so to say that virtual learning has been the cause of learning this year ignores the fact that the people who've actually been teaching our children, at least for elementary students, is parents, grandparents, daycare providers, and hired tutors. So parents have picked up the job that the school district is getting paid to do this year, and therefore please stop concluding that your model is working without recognizing that the teaching has largely come from sources outside the school this year. Furthermore, the board appears to mistakenly believe that the district has been so incredibly scientific with your COVID updates and your decision-making matrix, when in actuality, what these decisions have reflected is that you value COVID mitigation more than quality face-to-face instruction. And if that's the case, that as a district we value COVID mitigation over quality education, then perhaps all of our property tax dollars should go to COVID research instead of to our schools. Instead, I think that we all agree that both COVID mitigation and quality education are valued, and our learning model should reflect that. Through watching your board meetings, I've also come to realize that the reason for your decisions to move to virtual learning are primarily for the safety of the staff and less for the concern of the children. And yet what's inconsistent about this logic is that I have seen several of you, and I won't name names, but I have seen you in public places, at stores, your child's sporting events, Seven Oaks ski resorts, for example, which shows that you expect the employees at these stores and events to work in the same county with the same positivity rates to serve you. But somehow you don't think that the Ames Community School District staff should work in the exact same conditions to serve the children. We don't have all the answers to the COVID questions right now, but we do have data that shows that with thoughtful COVID protocols, schools are not super spreaders. Therefore, it is long overdue that the decision of the learning model reflect that we value both COVID mitigation and quality face-to-face education. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Betsy Waite. And you've been given permission to talk, Betsy.
Hi there. Caroline's looking forward to getting back to school and is very excited to see her friends and teachers again. Over 65% of the Ames community had kids in the buildings for in-person learning before we went online. I have to say, as one of those parents, I don't feel that these kids and families, including myself, have been given much of a voice. As of today, according to the Ames School District COVID dashboard and Governor Reynolds' guidelines, numbers would indicate that we should be able to return to a hybrid model on November 30th, which leads me to my next question. Why are we changing the metrics? And is every district in Iowa changing their metrics? Are we supposed to follow certain guidelines with our metrics under the governor's ruling? If we are using different metrics than the state requires, will the days count? Has the board asked for feedback from the local pediatricians? Because I know at the last meeting, it seemed like Dr. Passion was really pushing for the kids to be in school. I don't know if he is right now, but that would be a question I would have. Is the district counting absences of kids and staff that may or may not be positive or in quarantine into their percentages? Also, when the board talks about the 100% in-person model, how many students would we really be needing to plan mitigation strategies for? Previously in our case counts dashboard, the metrics were over 100 cases per 100,000. We would move to remote campus. With the proposed metrics tonight that I'm seeing, that number is 60. That's a huge difference, and I worry that that will keep our kids out of school. If the district is using positive case counts, which will go down in the next 4 weeks because the ISU students will be gone, what happens at the end of January when all of the ISU students come back? It seems like it would be a good time to grasp this opportunity to get these kids in school right now, as well as the next few weeks while the ISU student community is gone from Ames. Regarding the requested waiver, the Iowa Department of Ed states it does not have to be in 2-week increments. So why would we keep the kids out until December 14th? We don't know what the metrics will be. I understand you're saying that the science is telling us what it might be. Why wouldn't we give an earlier date in hopes of getting these kids back and push it back if we need to? Giving a date like the 14th shuts not only in-person schooling down, as you know, but all sports and activities. We are thankful for Judge and Ian. They are doing everything they can to salvage our basketball seasons to a later date. But the boys swim team probably doesn't have that option. They will most likely not get a season if you put this off until December 14th, and that is very unfortunate considering everything they've been through. There has to be another option. Is there a way to send the high school back first to start in hybrid? I have kids in both the Ames and Gilbert school districts. 1,223 of the 1,600 kids in Gilbert school district have an Ames address. My son goes to school 4 days a week, while my daughter is sitting at home online learning. It's working very well in Gilbert. I guess I'm trying to understand why our district is so different from the other school districts in our county that have their kids in at least hybrid and 100% in-person school, and they are playing games going forward with their activities. Ames is the #1 academic school district in the state, and we've had a great experience thus far in Ames. Please allow these kids to get back to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Any other individuals from the public desire to speak this evening on COVID-19? Seeing no hands raised, I will go ahead and move us to our discussion items. Yeah, we have one this evening, which is our board committee updates. We have, pardon me, 3 sets of minutes in the on the agenda, the documents here. I believe it is audit and budget facility. I'm going off memory. Audit and budget facilities and teaching and learning. Does anyone have any questions on the minutes that have been presented or any committees that would like to provide an update? Alan, it looks like you're speaking, but I can't hear you.
I was just speaking silently. For the facilities committee, I would just make note for board members to take a look. We had a presentation from the Story County Communications Emergency Management Response System. And they talked to us about a system that's being put in place in Story County to make it easier for schools and public safety officials to communicate in the needs of any type of emergency. It was a pretty fascinating discussion, and Ames is definitely going to be participating in that, and that should help a lot with some to improve some of the communication that we have within the schools.
I have an update, but it's not for a committee. Does anybody else want to go with a committee update?
Doesn't look like we have one. Go ahead, Monique.
Okay, I just wanted to give an update on the delegate assembly. So I'm the rep for us to the IASD delegate assembly, which was on Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't know. They call it Blur's Day. It's found out that's one of the words of the year is Blur's Day. So anyway, so one of the things that we did is we adopted a belief in educational equity. So that was really good because there had not been an overarching statement about that, and we adopted a really good statement. And then we certified the legislative priorities. That was the result of all the surveys that the school districts had done. And we actually created one during the meeting, which is a COVID-19 remediation priority, where IASD advocacy will be trying to get additional funds to help address the mediation needs for students related to COVID-19. But then the priorities are in order: mental health, which had 236 votes, supplemental state aid, which had 170 votes, school funding policy, which had 160 votes, preschool at 134 votes. So I was excited to see preschool made the cut. So hopefully it'll be a good year at the Capitol.
Thank you for that report, Monique. Any other questions or comments on board committees? Seeing none, are there any comments from the public on our board committee update? Seeing no hands that are raised, I will go ahead and move us to the public forum and open it up to any committee members who wish to address the board. Please raise your hand and we will follow our format as we have thus far in this meeting. I thought I saw a hand come up at one point. So if you would like to speak, now would be an opportunity if that individual wanted to speak. All right, seeing no hands that have been raised, we will go ahead and move on to consent items, and I will entertain a motion.
I move the board accept the consent items as presented.
Second.
Moved by Shields Cook, seconded by, I heard a quiet second. I also heard Bankin, so we'll go with Bankin. Superintendent Reisner.
Thank you. So donations for tonight: Keene Project Solutions, Danfoss Power Solutions, and Northminster Presbyterian Church.
All right, moved by Shields Cook, seconded by Bankin to approve consent items as presented. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Action items. I will entertain a motion on the updated COVID-19 guidance indicators.
I
Move the board approve.
Go ahead, Ellen.
I move the board approve the Ames Community School District COVID-19 guidance indicators and recommend educational model as presented.
Second.
Moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Linkaitis. Discussion. This has been tabled a couple times, and a few of us had the opportunity to meet with staff to talk about this. So Director Beerbaum or Director Shields Cook, I don't know if there's something you want to say, or our staff.
Yeah, I had put some notes together here that I can go through, and then if anybody else has some comments from how that meeting went. So as we discussed last time, we had a small group meet, review the metrics, and look for ways to incorporate everybody's goals into those. First, I just wanted to thank everybody involved in that meeting. It was a late meeting and a Friday, which might have shown at times, but the staff was great, and we continued to make some solid progress. And I think we put together something that we all had a hand in that I think works well. Just a reminder of some of the goals that had come out of the previous discussions. One was, this is simply meant to refine the existing guidance based upon what we've learned. And I think very much so that that's what it's doing here. Also, one of the clear goals was everyone wants to get kids in school. This is meant to provide clarity to the community on how that can happen, and really just provide a way that we can understand the community can understand what we're monitoring and why and how it fits together. Also, and this is really important, the indicators are meant to provide guidance, but allow staff to respond to what's happening. That's something we've seen that, that when we just went 100% online, that wasn't because of any community indicator, that was because of what was happening in the schools and what staff brought to us. One way I would summarize what we've come up with here, I'm going to take credit for another board member that put this together, but the guidance here relies upon staff assessment and in-school data to drive our delivery model. From there, the guidance establishes levels based on both CDC and Harvard Global Health information that give our community an assessment of what our current risk of spread in the community is. And that community risk can adjust our delivery model when needed for safety concerns. But the school data is the primary driver. What we're seeing in the schools, what we're seeing with the staff, and what we're seeing with the kids. The changes that were made from the last time you saw this, I'll just give a summary of this, and then if anybody has any questions, really all of these focused on making it more concise and more direct as to what we're doing. First, we removed the positivity factor as an indicator. I'll make one comment on that. Basically, when we reviewed all the data since the pandemic began, at all times, the case count was actually the driving indicator in our previous metrics. The positivity metric actually never mattered except for when we needed to get permission to go 100% online from the state. That's the only time it comes into effect, and it still is in this document. Also, we chose case rate limits that were meant to reflect the balance of the sources we found and are also consistent with some of the things we've seen historically when, let's say, numbers starting to be of concern for staff and for some of the buildings. Also, Kathy did a great job of clarifying how absences are counted, and we also clarified how the indicators here are used for guidance, but they aren't the only factors. We laid out some of those factors being, social emotional well-being, staff feedback, medical community guidance. We expect that those will continue to be factored in fully. As we heard from some of the principals tonight, there are many things going on in our community and with the students. Those are more important really than some raw numbers. We need to take those into account as well. And then finally, we also clarified that the school indicators really, as it comes down to staffing, really are going to be based upon what the building leaders are telling us. If a building leader says that the numbers of staff they have might vary from some specific percentage, but means that they can't provide services in that school, that is the primary factor. We're going to listen to the building leaders and the district leaders in that aspect. So in summary, we feel these indicators are a significant improvement from the earlier decision-making matrix document, built upon lessons learned, and also based on further expertise and additional knowledge from the discussions we've had. And we thank all the experts that have been willing to listen to our questions and have allowed us to reach out to them. And thank everybody for the previous meeting where we had many of those experts come and talk to us about what was going on. And with that, I'd go over to Sabrina, Elisa, Kathy, anything that I forgot to mention or any questions board members have?
You did a good job summarizing it, Alan.
Any questions from anyone or further discussion?
I just need just some clarifying questions. So I'm looking at, so thank you all. I know this was a huge task. Thank you. It's so clean. I appreciate it. So we're doing with school indicators. So it's basically building by building, right?
Yes, we would be looking at building rates for a student and staff absence.
And so what happens when the rates in a school are small, but the community risk indicator is high? Which line do we read?
So if a community indicator is too higher than a school indicator, it raises it by 1. So for example, if you had a school indicators in the green zone and our community indicator is in the orange zone, it would raise that to the yellow area. The one caveat with that is if you had student and staff indicators in the green zone and our case rate was 104 or so, then that would trump the green and move that immediately to red. It's in an override value.
I see. And so that's what you mean by the override, is it will override whatever's happening in the other categories. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And the other thought is really just more for Dr. Arnold or for the district. And so if we're going to be using these percentages, if it's by building and we're using these percentages, when I go to the COVID tracker, you're actually using just numbers, right? That those numbers aren't being given in percentages. Is there a way to help have it consistent so that parents understand how to use the matrix?
Yes, we are redesigning, pending the outcome of this decision. We are looking at redesigning the dashboard. The student and staff absence rates are on our current dashboard, although I do believe that we could make it more clear so it is in alignment with our changes to these metrics.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for your hard work on this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everybody for the hard work. This is much cleaner, and I agree. And then it's much cleaner. The only question that I have is that if we're again on this online remote, that we need to have 15% positivity. How are we doing that with the Department of Ed? How do we know what number that is 15? Because we're not using the percentage, but the Department of Ed is using that. So I wonder how we're how are we figuring that out? They have percentage and we don't.
Right. The Department of Ed has clarified that you can apply at less than 15%. And I think in our application, we can speak to the fact, what I mentioned earlier this evening about our positivity being affected by Iowa State's testing. But when we looked historically at our data, the case counts and with our normal levels of testing, the case counts did match closely with where the positivity would be or would have been. So it would work as a predictor.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering. I was looking at the data and it kind of matched up. So that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
I think that's a good question, though, Jamette, for the community to understand why are we moving from positivity to case counts? And it is because some of these variances we're seeing with the testing practices within our community. And so, like I believe both Alan said it and with Dr. Arnold, that this case count aligns with that under typical testing patterns. How's that?
And similar to that, something to point out that it's a little bit lost in here. We couldn't find a better way to present it, but Kathy made reference to it. When the 14-day case per day rate goes below 60, so thinking about where we're at now, what we're watching for is for that number to go below 60. And then when that does, Kathy will be looking at the school indicators. And if the school indicators are in orange, yellow, or green, that would be what these indicators would have for a trigger of going back. And again, this is totally meant for guidance, right? This isn't the absolute pull the trigger. It's still up to Jenny and staff to, look at this, and they could come back with some sort of recommendation that varies from this a bit, as we've said, but reasonably, we think most recommendations are going to be very close to this unless there's some specific special case. But we want to make clear that those special cases could occur.
Any other questions or comments? All right, it's been moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Lenkaitis. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Next item, continuation of payment to Durham during COVID-19 school closure.
I move the board approve the Fifth Amendment to the Durham Transportation Contract to provide payment of 89% of the daily route rate for routes not needed while in 100% virtual learning due to the COVID-19 pandemic, effective through June 30, 2021.
Second.
Moved by Linkaitis, seconded by Colton. Discussion? All those in,
One question, and we talked about this the last time this came up, and I just want to follow up. Jenny, have you talked to Durham, and are they using this time to take any actions as far as training or anything else that are beneficial to the district?
Yes, Darcy works closely with Durham, and so they are still, Durham is still running routes right now for us because we have students coming to school, and we have students going to our private school in the community. And so they are still running, but in terms of staff development, Darcy, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, we have created, or Audra Watson, our behavior coordinator, put together a Google Classroom. And within the Google Classroom, there are several different classes for all of the staff, the drivers and attendants to take. And Durham has set it up so that they're coming in shifts to take these classes so that they can continue to social distance, but take them as a group and learn from them and have discussion. There's things in there around special ed students, around behavior, management on the bus, critical consciousness. There's several hours, and they really reached out to us for things like that. They've also taken this opportunity to go through review some of their own trainings, cleaning. They're doing lots of that. And then, like Superintendent Reisner said, they're continuing to meet our route requests, which have changed daily during this time as the different administrators have requested to bring students in, and they're all on different schedules. Some come every day, some come 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and they've been very responsive to whatever we've reached out for.
Thank you for making sure that got put in place. It's great.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, see none. Moved by Linkaitis, seconded by Colton. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Item C, the resolution.
I move to approve the resolution directing the advertisement for sale of not to exceed $58 million general obligation bonds series 2021, approving electronic bidding procedures and approving official statement.
Second.
Moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Shields Cook. Discussion? Seeing none, this is a vote on roll call, so I will say your name as you appear on my screen. Director Benkin.
Aye.
Director Linkaitis.
Aye.
Director Colton.
Aye.
Director Beerbaum.
Aye.
Director Shields Cook.
Aye.
Director Franzen, aye. Passes 6-0. Item D, new Ames High School change orders.
I move the board approve the change orders for the new Ames High School project as presented.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Shields Cook, seconded by Benkin. Discussion?
I drove by it the other day. Wow, it's coming along. It's pretty awesome.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
nay. Ooh, passes 6-0. Board and staff items. Items from the board.
I just wanted to take a minute to give a shout out to our teachers and staff. You all have had to pivot and pivot and pivot constantly this year. Even for my kids who are in the remote campus and my elementary schoolers in the remote campus, I've seen their teachers learning from what's happening and revising and rethinking and making changes. And I see that across our district. And I'm so grateful for all of the long hours and hard work that you are putting in to help our students be successful this year.
Just want to, oh, sorry, Alan, go ahead.
I just wanted to put a shout out for one of our directors announced her retirement, and I wanted to thank her for all the work she's done because it's been awesome, and I've loved having her a part of that team. And I'm sure we will talk more about that at some future time, and there may be plaques involved and things like that. But just wanted to mention that because a lot of times in meetings like this, things like that get passed over without acknowledging that. So thank you.
I have to swallow hard when you say that because I'm still in denial. Happy that she gets to retire, but yes.
Director Bankin, were you going to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to say that my thoughts are with the students and staff who are dealing with COVID, who have active diagnoses. You've been on my mind. I know that this disease is can be very rough physically, but also emotionally. And so I just wanted you all to know that I was thinking of you and hope that you are on the mend soon.
I'd like to congratulate the girls swim team. Can't speak today, sorry. But yes, I would like to congratulate them and thank them for all their hard work. It's been a tough year, and I would like to thank them. And I also want to send my loving friend Jody some love. I thought of you all day. I love you and your beautiful family.
Well, thank you everyone for all of those appropriate words. I would agree and echo and second all of them. So thank you. Superintendent Reisner.
So the item I have is just under there as, could you click on the work session item? Thank you. The work session. So work sessions, I apologize. We had, well, I guess whenever it was, it seems like 10 years ago, but it might've been this summer when we had adopted our new board calendar. We talked about doing work sessions once a month. With the pace that we've been having board meetings and the COVID things that have come up, we are looking at delaying that until next year to maybe go into that where we have one work session a month. It just doesn't meet our needs this year. And we're having more board meetings than I think any of us have ever thought we would be. And I don't think we need to add work sessions every month. We will put those work sessions on as we need them. So coming up, we're going to have the data work session. We're going to talk about board committees and our just kind of our focus areas or our areas of emphasis for our priorities as we move forward. So I think we can do a better job by just scheduling those as needed in between our 3 meetings a week. We won't stay that way forever, but so that is the only item I have tonight.
Great, thank you. Board planning calendar. Like Superintendent Reisner said, we have on December 7th, that will be our next regular meeting, and along with a work session that will start at 5:30. And since it's not pulled up, I won't highlight anything else on the board calendar. We do have our annual meeting, organizational meeting. After we adjourn this one, we will call to order our next meeting, but our next regularly scheduled meeting is December 7th. So
And
All
as,
right. Oh,
and as just sorry, as a reminder, there is only one meeting in December.
yes,
So,
just December 7th. Thank you for highlighting that. Yes. Yep. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Shields Cook. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. We will go ahead and we don't change our Zoom. And Chris Densland will move in as President Pro Tem and will open our next meeting.
Good evening. We'll call the annual 2020 annual meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors to order. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Benkin. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Passes 6-0. Director Franzen, would you like to read the purpose statement?
I'd be happy to. The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential.
Okay, thank you. The first item on the agenda is the election of the president. So I would entertain motions for the office of president.
I would like to nominate Director Shields Cook for president.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? If not, would someone like to make a motion to cease nominations?
I move we cease nominations.
Second.
Moved by Benkin, seconded by Lankaitis. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Passes 6-0. So we will move to vote on the office of president. We have one candidate, Director Shields Cook. All in favor of Director Shields Cook, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Passes 6-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Since I didn't know who was going to be president, I didn't send the oath of office for the vice president. So I think we'll go ahead and just do the election of, and then swear you both in if that's okay, Director Shields Cook. Okay, so we'll entertain motions for the office of vice president.
I nominate Director Lankaitis.
Second.
I move nominations cease.
Second.
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 All in favor of nominations ceasing, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. So we will move on to the vote for the office of vice president, and we have one candidate. So all in favor of Director Kaitis for vice president, say aye.
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 And opposed, say nay. Passes 6-0. Congratulations, Director Lankaitis. So if I could get Director Shields Cook and Director Lankaitis to raise their right hand. Okay, this is a little weird doing this virtually, so I'm kind of flying blind here. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of President and Vice President in the Ames Community School District as now or hereafter required by law?
I do.
I do.
Congratulations. If I was in person, I'd shake your hand. So I will gleefully hand over the meeting to our new president, President Shields Cook.
Thank you. And I think we only have one item on our agenda, discussion item on, do we have the agenda?
The agenda's gone.
There we go. Board organization and structure. And I think, is this related to our committees that we will discuss at the next work session? So we will revisit our committee assignments at the next work session and have those fleshed out in the next couple of weeks here.
And then there's the board and staff items there too.
Yep. Okay. And then board and staff items. Are there any items from the board?
I just want to say congratulations to Sabrina and Michelle. I look forward to the next year. I've been really excited to get here and see what you guys can do in leadership. And I think we've got a lot of tough things. We probably will see each other another 5 times between now and Christmas, but thank you for being willing to step in, and I look forward to the next year.
Thank you.
I would echo that. I appreciate your, number one, willingness to serve on the board, but number 2, willingness to commit a little bit more time in board leadership, and appreciate what I know the 2 of you will be doing, and excited for your leadership. So thank you.
I just want to thank the board for their confidence.
Yes, and thank you, Elisa and Alan, for the awesome leadership that you've provided in this crazy time.
You're here.
Yeah, I second that. Congratulations, Michelle and Sabrina. This is cool. I'm excited. And thank you, Elisa and Alan. You guys rocked. Thank you so much.
I agree. Congratulations and thank you so much. You know, it will be a challenge leading the board through, you know, a very difficult time. And I don't think that we could have chosen better representatives to help lead our community and our district through these challenges. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Shields Cook, I will be getting a hold of you so that I can have you sign your life away.
I look forward to it. Are there any other items from the board? All right, items from the superintendent.
Well, like everybody already said, you know, congratulations to both of you, but I want to also take a minute to thank both Alan and Elisa, and I'm going to go by first name here. It's a tremendous amount of work to go into a board leadership role, and I just appreciate all of the phone calls and those times when we have to work through some difficult things in a quick way, and your help with contacting, you know, other board members and reaching out. So thank you for your leadership and for working right beside me through a difficult time. So as we transition, this will be a new fun time for all of us. So we'll get you up to speed on just those little weekly things that come up, and reach out for anything you need some additional help with.
Thank you. All right, well then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Franzen and seconded by Beerbaum. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Have a good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Night.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.